The effects were almost instantaneous. The physical world around me seemed to be ebbing and flowing. Time itself was speeding up and slowing down, and things were morphing into themselves. I jumped on my bed and closed the door. I was cold and couldn't breathe. Death itself had taken my consciousness, and it was no longer pleasant, but was not in the least bit alarming. My first hallucinogenic experience was an impulsive dance with what is known to be the most powerful tryptamine in the world. My experience with DMT was quite possibly the most interesting 25 minutes I have ever lived. Sitting on the floor of my loft, conversing about the subjective effects of a mysterious powder my friend just insufflated, I was composed and calm, listening to the chatter of the boys in the room. The mirror already broken out, I lit a cig and sipped on some iced tea. It was a regular night for us. Just drug talk and friends. If you're planning on snorting the DMT I made, let me know. I really want to know what it's like. My friend, we'll call him DR, looked at my boyfriend. Generally apprehensive about hallucinogens, I knew his anxiety reared up. Okay, I'll let you know. I looked at him, aloof as to why he was so complacent about it, when in reality it would be a very serious issue for him. DR turns to me, the mirror already on his lap. He spoons out some of the spirit molecule and says, "What about you? You want to blow some?" I was calm and unusually at ease with the situation at hand. I'd hardly even met DR and his girl twice, but for some reason, I knew that the environment I was in was one of safety and sheer curiosity. I had smoked DMT only once before, but had never broken through. The swirls of colours were cool, but I could just not leave the ground. I had too much control. It was nothing like what I've heard people experience. Perhaps I had too much hype, being that this tryptamine was supposed to make you witness God and the inner workings of the universe. Perhaps it was the atmosphere, or perhaps it was just me. As I stared down at the line in front of me, I was fully aware of the repercussions. 20 to 30 minutes of an intense coma-like trip. It was not the night I had planned, nor was it something I had ever thought I was going to try again. Before I knew it, I snorted a line of lidocaine and moved straight to the DMT. Even now, as I recall this experience, my heart races with the memories of time. I took it all in one shot, and before anyone could say, "Damn, I feel like a pussy," I was on the couch, sitting up trying to make sense of what was going on around me. The effects were almost instantaneous. The physical world around me seemed to be ebbing and flowing. Time itself was speeding up and slowing down, and things were morphing into themselves. Things seemed brighter, and my vision more acute. The room itself was breathing. Too much for me to handle. I put my feet up and my head down. The only reprieve I had from the intense stress my body felt was letting go completely. I buried my face into my hands and lifted off. My arm melted into my body as I was searching for the visuals that seemed to beckon me into their realm. It was completely dark, and the last thing I could make out in the real world was DR astounded that in 2 minutes I was completely lifted. As my whole body melted away into the universe, it was as though a whole new world lay before me, a dark, yet vibrant, colour world. The world was almost compartmentalised, expanding from the centre of my head, right between my eyes. I was torn between the real world and DMT land, and it was making me sick to my stomach. I sat up abruptly, after what seemed like an hour, and looked around the room, nauseous. "Okay, I'm done, I'm back," I begged, but the room was still spinning. It was an effort to stay cognizant. DR, his girl, and my boyfriend stared back, morphing into each other and said, "No, you're not." As if I released all efforts to stay grounded, I gave in to the experience and fell back on the couch and covered my eyes. The dark compartment, filled with lights and colours, was infinite darkness, yet every colour exploded in front of me. My body melted away and my breathing stopped. My stomach pains were the only thing keeping me from complete and utter release. The swirling kaleidoscope of colours morphed into figures. Near the end of the world was an apex, a hole, a rift in the eternal realm that the figures were helping me towards. As if they picked me up out of my body, reaching towards my reality, they lifted me up and guided me towards the end of the world. Flashes of fractal colors that morphed into the beings had no end and no beginning, only an apex at the center with which everything was coming out of and going into. The fractals created the most beautiful flowers and pulsating images I have ever experienced. 10 minutes in, I wasn't breathing. I had no body. I stood up again, grounding myself, and ran into my room. It needed to be dark. I was curious, and the idle chatter of my guests was staving my experience. I jumped on my bed and closed the door. I was cold and couldn't breathe. Death itself had taken my consciousness, and it was no longer pleasant, but was not in the least bit alarming. The colours were back, the figures exploding. Then abruptly they were gone. I opened my eyes and my room was dark. Wires exploded all over the room as if I was on a giant circuit board. Energy ran through everything in front of me, and it was vibrant and colourful. My open-eye visuals were intense, and I stared at my blanket as if I could see every thread that comprised it. I was melting into my bed. I adjusted myself and giggled. This was intense. I was so curious in nature. I felt as though I was a wayward sprite finally experiencing her rightful home. I snuggled under a blanket and breathed my way back into my closed-eye visuals. I adjusted my head. It was as if wherever I laid my head, the visuals stemmed from. Again, the colours and lights, although a little less vibrant, were spewing from right between my eyes. The figures were back, and this time, they were dancing, continuing to beckon me into their realm. 15 minutes into the trip, and I was ready to be done. The air my lungs lacked made me uncomfortable, but so did breathing. Having any control of my body made me sick to my stomach, but I couldn't let go of my breath. I was buffering leaving my body and immediate reality, and it sucked. Suddenly I became very aware of my body and the darkness that surrounded me. I yelled for my friend. I'll call her Frey. I needed someone to help me come back to life. Light filled the room as she entered, and in the corner of my dark room, gears and mechanical clockwork spun as time was once again entering the equation. I closed my eyes as she sat on the bed with me. Spurts of electrical colour wafted in and out as I finally was coming back to Earth. My breathing became easier, and my stomach less tight. I took a deep breath and called for my friends. It was time for people. I needed them to bring me back to this world. I feared I would never return. I am truly blessed to have experienced death. I will forever live in the light of it, and not for fear of it. Hours after my trip, I came to the realization that this is all bullshit. This material world is one that we have created for ourselves to mask the fact that we will die, and we will become a part of the eternal energy. There is no God but the one within ourselves. The universal energy is what binds us, and it is what we will become a part of as we delve into the world. Days after my trip, I came to realize that my body is my only limitation. My mind and soul should be explored and revered, and though my body is a vessel, it is not the end. I have always believed that there is truth in patterns. Anything that is repeated is worth noticing. Have you ever noticed how the fundamentals of most things are congruent? Quantum physics and particle theory, string theory, chi, geometric dimensions, time and space movement. This trip solidified my ideas, beyond the words I've written here, beyond the hallucinogenic poison. It opened me up to myself, and I have only benefited from that. We are eternal energy, pulsing and moving. What cannot be created, cannot be destroyed. No more DMT for me. I think I will start meditating, however. My pineal gland will not remain untapped.